What is going on, Governor Chisgule here, and today we're going to help you set up your city defense. If you're learning about city defense for the very first time, or you're pretty far along into the game, then you're going to want to stick around, because we're going to give you some tips to level up that garrison. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. We're going to walk through garrison defense, starting from the very beginning of the game, working our way all the way up to the mid to late game. Now, if you like Rise of Kingdoms videos where we help you defend your city, then you should like and subscribe. We've got a bunch of videos on this topic. We'll cycle those cards through the top as we go, and we are a sponsored creator with Rise of Kingdoms. Thanks again for your support. So, let's talk about garrison. Now, at the very start of the game, is the first phase we're going to talk about. Then we're going to talk about after you get a few epic commanders under your belt. Then we're going to talk about what you do when you're starting to look at legendaries. And then we'll get all the way to the top tier garrison defense for your city. So let's get right into what you start with on your wall. And you all know that, to access your city defense, you tap the little wall button and you go in and you just swap out the commanders. The skills and talents and equipment from the primary commander are going to apply. And these skills only from the secondary commander will apply for your garrison. This is the same thing for the open field. Now, when you are just starting out, the first commander you're going to put on your wall is going to be your highest level, strongest commander. You're not going to have a lot of options here, people, at the start of the game. So just pick whatever your starting commander was associated with your civilization. They're going to have the most skills. They're very likely to be the very best that you're going to be able to muster for defending your wall. Now, who you use as a secondary commander to defend your wall is an interesting question, and that will depend on whether or not you're spending money on Minamoto. Minamoto is my pick for a secondary. I tapped him, but I didn't actually mean to make him the primary. Minamoto will be my recommendation for a secondary commander if you've got him at even just 5-1-1-1. That's going to be better than an epic that's 3-0-0-0, right? So I start the game when I did my restart, when I did my main account, using the primary commander that I got just from playing, and picking that starting civilization. And Minamoto is the secondary. And that lasted me for probably, I want to go say 3 weeks to a month. Now, by the time you're about 30 days in, you've been opening a lot of gold keys, silver keys, getting commanders other ways. You're going to start to have some options for where you're investing. My recommendation to you, of course, is going to be to invest in your starting commander, because hopefully that's one that you chose very intentionally, because you want to use them for some part of the game. But then your second investment should probably be Sun Tzu or Boudica. Boudica if you care more about barbarians, Sun Tzu if you're just looking for all-around goodness. Sun Tzu is just the jam. Sun Tzu will then become the primary for your garrison. Drop garrison talents onto them. We'll show you the build that we personally are using to defend our city. You can lean on that, and we'll show you the order in which you apply those skills. Sun Tzu is going to live on your wall as a primary for a very long time. Even if you run around and use him for fighting in the open field as a secondary commander, that's a-okay. You could put a bubble on your shield if you think you're going to get rallied, or you teleport to dodge it. There's one of many ways you can dodge your city getting hit while your troops are out. What you're really concerned about is deterring an attack while you're asleep. And this gets into an interesting idea, which is, in the early game, you should not make yourself look like a tasty snack to a big spender. I will repeat. If you are holding lots of resources, don't have lots of troops, and have a junky-looking garrison, you will look like a tasty snack to a big spender who wants kill event points, who wants to get your resources. So your best garrison defense, in many ways, in the early game, yes, you put Sun Tzu on your wall and you feel good, but don't hold so many resources that you, again, look tasty. Nom 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 nom. In many ways, in the early game, smart play is your best garrison. This is your backup here. So Sun Tzu would be on your wall at that point in time, and you've got to make a call. My starting commander was Boudica, so at one point in time, this was my garrison, and this was a really solid garrison. 2 expertise commanders. I also have a decent-ish decent-ish Minamoto. My Garrison for a time looked sort of like this, although both of them were much lower level. Now, at some point, you are 60 to 90 days into playing Rise of Kingdoms, and you've got more options. You've got more commanders that are expertise, and you can now choose from a broader range of commanders that you're working with. Now, I can show you here in my account. This account's like 140 or so days old, maybe 150 days old. We've got only 5 epics expertise, and one of them is Lohar. You're not going to use Lohar on your wall. So who do you pair with Sun Tzu? In my perfect world, as I mentioned, some of your first investments are going to be a commander like Boudica and Sun Tzu. You're doing your Joan of Arc because she, of course, is really phenomenal for many, many game modes. However, the 4th commander that you probably invest in, 5th if you count Lohar. And look, don't use Universal Epic Sculptures on Lohar. Don't do it. Just rally your Lohars. That's the way to do that. In my opinion, a commander that is hugely underestimated but quite good for defending your city against a swarm is none other than Kusunoki. This commander is also actually pretty gosh darn good in a game mode like Canyon. If I was looking at the early game and what you're doing when you hit that 120 to 150 day mark, you're probably looking at a Garrison with Sun Tzu and Kusunoki, or in the case that I went on here, you could use Sun Tzu and Pelagius. Now, the other option you have at this point in the game, if you're a bigger spender, is you may at this point have invested in a legendary or 2. At some point, in addition to having a Sun Tzu primary, which I feel very strongly is the correct choice in the early part of the game, unless you're spending so big you've got multiple legendaries that are, past level 50, which seems unlikely to me, my recommendation is that if you're now in the world where, you know what, I've got a Richard I and he's 5111, or I've got an E-Song and I'm starting to put a bunch of skills onto him, maxing the 1st and the 2nd skill, you can rock one of those commanders as the secondary on your wall, and that is exactly what we have done. We decided to go all in on E-Song. We're very close to rocking the expertise skill on this commander, which is going to be pretty transformative for battling barbarians. It's also really good for defending your city. That is the route I would recommend in the very early game. So to summarize the first part of the game, you're starting with just what commander did I pick, and maybe Minamoto, and maybe one of your other commanders if you're not investing in Minamoto. You're then advancing to a world in which, hey, now I've got, Sun Tzu and maybe another epic. And then you can take a look at the world in which you've got Sun Tzu and perhaps a legendary. But Sun Tzu is just crucial to this city defense plan. He's just too gosh darn good to not use in this way. Now, at this stage, and on our restart project, card up in the top if you want the whole playlist, but in this restart project, we're just in this phase now where we're expertising and working on that legendary backup to Sun Tzu. At some point, you can look at having 2 legendary commanders on your wall. Now, which commanders should they be? What would be most optimal? I want to call attention to the fact that Garrison commanders are very good. You could use a non-Garrison commander on your wall, but I don't think that makes sense. So you're looking for 2 legendary commanders that are both Garrison commanders. Well, guess what, my friends? There's only so many options in the early game. You've got Richard I, and you've got Charles Martel. Both of mine are pretty low level at this point, and those are your options for city defense. You could use one of them as the primary. However, the legendary pair that I like the most for defending your city is going to be Charles Martel with E-Song. Essentially, what I've got here, E-Song's secondary, but Charles Martel swapped in the primary. That is because Charles Martel is going to boost the damage that you deal from his active skill, and then Esong is going to do big damage. I really don't like Richard the First for defending your city because he is going to heal troops, bring them back into the fight, and it's going to fill up your hospital at some point. Even though overall Richard the First is a very, very, very strong commander. I have used them in the past for defending my city. I don't know, I've been rallied a bunch of times, caught up in the top for one of those. That will work really, really well. And I just want to call attention to the fact that when your city's getting hit, all your troops are going to go first to the hospital. You don't have any of your troops die until your hospital is full. And then instead of becoming a sev wound, they've got nowhere to go in the hospital, they then die. The enemy, on the other hand, is going to have 100% of sev wounds be deaths, unless they've got some special talents or skills potentially to mitigate that. But that is important to keep in mind as we look at the legendary pairings that you might do in the early to mid game for defending your city. No, what I would recommend to you, if you can be patient and you can hold on a little longer, rather than investing in another garrison commander for your wall, would be to wait until a commander like Constantine is released into the game, or you complete Season 2 of your KVK, and at that point in time, maybe you got Wu Zetian. I would argue that a Wu Zetian primary or Constantine primary, both really quite exceptional, would be very, very good at that point in time for defending your city. Now, if you didn't go all in on a legendary earlier, like I have with Sun Tzu, then going all in on a commander like Constantine primary, Sun Tzu secondary, or... yeah, no, that's the way I would do that. Constantine primary, Sun Tzu secondary will be very, very good for defending your city. The Wu Zetian, of course, is phenomenal, and that would work in the same way. Wu Zetian primary with Sun Tzu secondary will be really good. That would be very impressive patience on your part for saving that many legendary heads for that long. Now, you might start to wonder, hey, Chisgule, at what point would like a 5/5/1/1 legendary be better than our friend Sun Tzu? And that is an interesting one. Is a 5/5/1/1 legendary better than Sun Tzu? I suppose that could be the case. Constantine and Wu Zetian have the support tree. It generates so much rage. It generates just so much rage that I think you really could go a long way with a 5/5/1/1. I keep it really simple, though. I just rock the Sun Tzu, and then I've got the Esong as the secondary, and that's going to last me for a very, 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 very long time. And again, I want to encourage you that like you can have a Garrison which really only serves as a deterrent, but even high power players get completely obliterated, especially when they don't set their Garrison correctly. Card up in the top for Solimar, who lost, in my estimation, somewhere around $200,000 worth of troops getting rallied. Yes, in fact, that was a thing. So, given those sort of phases of evolution for a city defense, let me just give you a quick peek at the build that I'm using on my Sun Tzu for defending the city. Here you go. This is what we would recommend for defending your city. This build is very powerful. It leans on the very best of the Garrison talents for city defense. The rest into this tree are either okay or not relevant, which is kind of remarkable that that is the way that tree works, but that is the way that tree works. That means you do have a lot of points that can go into other places like Feral Nature. We've also made our way up to get a little bit of Iron Spear in case we're getting rallied with calves, some extra rage gen, a boost to your strength when you drop below 50%, and a teeny bit of normal attack damage. We think this build is really quite solid for defending your city and will last you a very, very, very long time in that regard. Again, I want to emphasize for a moment that personal accountability is still your best Garrison defense. Maintaining a safe position within your kingdom, maintaining a safe position within KVK, peace shielding proactively to protect yourself, dropping your troops into a nearby flag that will never get hit because there's nothing nearby is a great way to protect your city. I mean, I know people who overtrain troops like way before Season 1 of KVK, and every night when they went to bed, they took all 5 marches and they dropped them into a flag because they didn't want to get zeroed overnight. Totally get it. My recommendation is that you need to play smart. A good garrison won't replace that. However, I assure you that as we start to get into the 30, 40 million power range, and I know we've got a little bit of a ways to go before we get there, but as we approach that range, we're going to start to hit the point at which it really becomes unprofitable for someone to swarm our city, and at that point, we're really a stepwise function ahead of being able to stay safe. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, my friends. This was kind of a fun one to make. It piggybacks off of another video we made a very long time ago. Card up in the top about whether or not you need to prepare for a rally or a swarm. That advice is also pretty relevant, so check that one out if you're looking for more information on defending your city. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this or found some piece of useful information. I'd be eager to hear in the comments, like, what garrison do you use for your city? And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.